It's been often stated that seeing is believing. But in the story you're about to witness, believing is seeing. Sight is often about vantage point. No one attempts to see the whole of a vast landscape from the ground level. No. Altitude gives sight new perception, so let's go higher. High enough to attempt to see from heaven's outlook a story of a family of families in Christ, called to be on mission with God, both locally and globally, and how God has brought about personal transformation in making a community of them and then using them to bring about transformation in other communities. In 2011, the world seemed particularly unstable to the natural eye. It was a year filled with public international deaths, extraordinary disasters, and varying calamity. In this moment of time, the world was in desperate need of answers. Answers that only the creator and maintainer of it all could supply.
6 months or so before we began, I had finished preaching a midweek service at Living Faith Christian Center. And on my way to go to preach that service, I remember taking all of the plans, all the prospectus we put together, the visioning papers we had put together. And I remember taking it all and just saying, Lord, I'm putting this down. And I've been working on this so long, maybe this isn't even you and it's just been me encouraging myself in this. And I'm gonna put this down until you confirm it. To build a church is certainly to declare war against the kingdom of darkness. And I went, finished preaching, non-eventful in many ways, stood at the front of the church, as was the tradition there at the end of the service, and a woman walks up to me. Everybody left the sanctuary, but this woman makes a beeline up to me. I don't even know who she is, never seen her before. And she walked up to me and she said, God told me to tell you this is your confirmation. And what he told you to do, you need to go ahead and get started now. And I was so, I feel like all the blood ran out of my body. Like, what?
In the midst of such chaos, what solutions could, would, or should the God of the universe have offered? Well, in a world filled with fresh despair, on July 8th, 2011, he birthed yet again his Plan A with no Plan B. Of all things, a church, a perfecting church, with the deterrent of massive flooding in the region and the threat of no one being able to attend, God in his infinite wisdom filled the Fells Planetarium in Center City, Philadelphia, with enough people, enough sight, and enough belief that he would use them for such a time as this. This community formed quickly to both demonstrate and accentuate that they were a living and breathing edifice by calling common men and common women to the most uncommon of gathering places for a church at the time.
Well, when you think of church, you probably think of a grand building with a steeple and stained glass windows, but hundreds of locals are finding religion in a far different location. Eyewitness News reporter Jerika Duncan takes us to a movie theater where the film is replaced by faith.
At United Artists Movie Theater in Washington Township, New Jersey,
don't worry about things around you.
Something new and different is playing for hundreds of people with free admission to the non-denominational church called the Perfecting Church.
When he brought that up to me, that, Pastor Kevin might be planting a church, I was like, let's go.
It's definitely the way we've engaged together, the way we've been involved together over the years.
Yes.
It just, from worshiping together to serving together, it just, you feel connected.
Years from just stopping by, dropping off newspapers, to then that conversation of refreshing your spirit, to attending and then absorbing the message. It was one particular day. It just, spirit kind of overwhelmed me.
I moved here from Kansas City, Missouri. So I had visited some churches and hadn't found what I needed for me and my two boys. And someone invited me to the Perfecting Church at the time. The church was meeting at the local high school. The first visit, I was hooked. I said, I want to come back again. And two things drew me to the church. One was the children's church for my kids, because we don't all want to sit together the whole time. So they visited the children's church and they enjoyed it. They said, okay, we'll go back. The second thing that drew me to the church was just listening to Pastor Kevin preach, and it was more like teaching versus preaching. I felt like he was teaching from the Bible, and I could see his heart through his sermon.
There are not many things in this life that we associate with the word precious. Babies are precious. We grow to learn that time is precious. The most famous saying would be that diamonds are precious. But here's the thing about diamonds. There's nothing quick about their formation. They require pressure. They don't fit well in our microwave society unless they're unnatural or fake. The same is true of the Lord's precious church. They take a long time to form. And unfortunately and fortunately, they require withstanding a lot of pressure in order to be properly shaped. On November 19, 2019, the Lord allowed the church to enter its new building with the highest hopes of being a glimmering light of Christ to the world. But this doesn't happen without contrast. The pain and darkness of family loss has bred a new family of families through the growth and connection of Peace Cells and the support of Healing Hearts Ministries. The black cloth of hunger and want draped over the community has now shown the twinkling brilliance of a food pantry fueled and funded by the one who would soon come in the twinkling of an eye.
The church is awesome. That we always have a good number and like the great people coming out and helping us out here and serving with us, and the camaraderie is just awesome. They're so friendly and so outgoing and easy to talk to, and again, like just that community thing and getting to know people and talk to people.
You can't make change until you start to build relationships.
We come here so that we can arm ourselves to go out and fight the things that we do fight.
I love a church that is community-oriented, that's involved with civil rights, that's involved with what the families in the community are experiencing.
Human rights.
Yes, civil rights is human rights.
Pastor Brown and the Perfecting Church has that way of being the bridge. The community in Winslow was divided. When you have people in the school, the governing body and that, working together, it's contagious.
The church's assignment in this age, I believe that we are uniquely equipped to, like Jesus, dismantle the barriers that exist between mankind and God, but also within the family of God.
So after I worked out my own grief journey, God just really birthed a ministry in me. And it was basically to help other women who had lost children, because it's just such a lonely road.
Accepting that I no longer had my son, I no longer had my husband, and the fact that these ladies embraced me, because it wasn't that I just had child loss, I had lost my husband as well. God hasn't forgotten her. God hasn't forsaken her. So I just think I've seen a change just within that community in it of itself, because we're serving there.
It's making us be more resilient and making us be more like Christ.
It's a safe place to take your mask off and just be who you are, so that then Christ can make you who he wants you to be.
The care that we give to each other, it just blossoms.
You can't talk about what it means to be a church in this moment, and certainly not the Perfecting Church, without also talking about loving our neighbor includes loving Muslims and loving Jews. And some might think that undermines the authenticity of your faith, but instead, I think it really is the thing that verifies the authenticity of your faith. And it's actually made the faith of our church stronger.
God, the expert jeweler, laid his church down in Sewell, New Jersey, contrasted against polarizing times of racial division, only to foster a new sparkle in the community of racial reconciliation. Furthermore, If 10 years of time were not enough to form, and having to always play the role of David in a dark fight against many Goliaths wasn't enough pressure, why in the world would a small, predominantly African American church become involved in trying to bring peace to all who reside in the Holy Land amidst the longest human conflict the world has known? Why, you ask? Because in God's economy, diamonds are forever. And so is family.
I'm one of the leaders with the Global team, which is a team. Twice a year we go to Israel and Palestine. My day-to-day job is in law enforcement. So to go with people who have specialties in different dominions and then be able to take that over to the Middle East, to be able to help the women and men and women and children in the West Bank and Israel has been a blessing.
I had the call from God to tell the people, especially from the West, about the reality on the ground in the West Bank, in our land here. Especially the challenges the Christians, the body of Christ, is facing as we are living in unstable situation.
Going to the West Bank, me, city boy, North Philly, Palestine, wasn't sure what that was going to be about, and it changed my life. And I've been several times, and it changes my life every single time. And Pastor was very, very adamant about us understanding we were not going to disciple people by telling them about Christ. We were going to be an extension of Christ. And if we do that, then it will make way for God to do what he wants to do in our lives and then do in their lives.
I think what God was at work then and is doing now is raising up an end-time church, a church that's born for adversity.
But our desire is just to see people released in the domains of society to extend the kingdom of God beyond boundaries and borders, to see a diverse expression of the body. Then also the global work. I don't think it's by coincidence that God calls us into the longest lasting, deepest conflict that goes all the way back into the scriptures and puts us in the middle of that.
I would hope that more people catch on to the message of the Perfecting Church and that it multiply.
The concept of having 10 churches of 1,000 people spread out throughout the community and throughout this area, to me and to us, is what reigns with us, you know what I mean?
I would say that if I had one hope, it would be that we would become one in what we represent, what we think, caring for one another, loving one another, just doing community together. I mean, Pastor Kevin is very fond of saying we do life.
Yeah, together.
And that's what we do.
Yeah. I would love to see much more diversity. I would love to see division absolutely erased. I would love to see people feeling comfortable in their own skin, whatever that skin looks like, in this building, in this place, with these people, knowing that whatever your background is, whatever your experience is, you'll be loved here.
I believe it was a vision from one of the leaders of TPC being a blanket for the community. It was a quilted blanket that had a lot of different, what a quilt looks like. And so when you just told us to close our eyes and I was thinking through the years, I saw the quilt getting bigger. I saw the quilt spreading further.
When I think about the highlights, I think about shirts. And so I was looking at my drawer, I found these different shirts. I'll just flash through some. I think about working with the high school ministry, Design Not Alter, DNA, and the young people, seeing young people grow and graduate high school and go on with their lives. I think about the Perfecting You, which is now the Deep End, our ministry for young adults, and seeing those young people grow. Father's Day and the Father's Day picnics and the time out there playing softball with all the guys, and thinking about A Few Good Men, us going out there working together and serving 15 different high school football teams and doing character development and all the great stories. Think about all the small groups and the P-cells and the times when we've cried together and laughed together, celebrated highs, and helped each other through some of the lowest points of our lives. And I think this is like the first church anniversary barbecue. Like, I just remember all those times of the people just coming together, being a family, and inspiring each other to go be and do more. I think you asked me, like, thinking 10 years from now and 20 years from now. We had the joy of being a part of it and wearing these shirts. And now we're wearing this shirt because God has sent us out to plant the Engaged Church in Burlington County. We just believe in the next 10 years, there's gonna be more shirts.
So with a future that is not only bright, but sparkling with hopes of church plants worldwide and ministry outreach in every domain, the Perfecting Church has never had it easy. Because easy was not the call. But here lies the hope. Sometimes sunshine, it mixes with the rain. And quite often, sweetness, it mingles with the pain. The healthy are called to coexist with the lame. Even chaff are allowed to commingle with the grain. But truth exists despite the presence of the false. And a gain is sometimes a first cousin to a loss. How can a free gift intermingle with a cost? Well, only when a God interacts with a cross. And when that cross is a participant of death, until it squeezes life, until there's no hope left, then one grave ensures the universe won't survive until the Father raises Christ and he comes back alive. Now the hard times can hang out with the good. Ups can swing with downs, and they probably should. Now healing and suffering both have their place when sin, death, and Satan have been conquered by grace.
Exceedingly and abundantly above all we could ask or think, according to the power that worketh in you. God is able to do just what he said he would do. And he's gonna fulfill every promise to you. Don't give up on God, 'cause he won't give up on you. He's able.
What we see is just a diverse group of people. People from all different walks of life, people from all different ages, different economic backgrounds. But the one thing that is consistent with them is that they're ready to surrender and discover what God's plan, what God's purpose is for them being here.
I equally am interested in seeing other people progress. We want to introduce people to the God that we know, that has produced so much in our lives that we absolutely know without him in our lives, we would not be where we are today. And we want other people to discover that God that we know, so that in discovering him, they discover who they are and become perfected.
At the end, it's going to be a perfect God perfecting people. The Perfecting Church.
Let's go.